Seattle, Mike here, Fights with Friends. Hit that like button, or I'll tell Dana White to give your boss some advice on employee compensation. Make sure you're subscribed if you like everything boxing and MMA. We do live events almost every Saturday for major combat events. And speaking of pay, guys, I think it's time that we start talking about how the fighters that we love so much in this violent sport are compensated. And some of them have, a second and third job. Some of them are spending much more money on training than they make inside of the cage. And we're talking about fighters in the UFC. Sarah Alpar made news a few months ago when she put up a GoFundMe page to ask fans to help her pay for her training camp because she felt like she could not train properly to fight at this level, and she just didn't have the money. And then last night, the main event, Calvin Gastelum and Jared Cannonier. In Jared Cannonier's speech to Daniel Cormier, the first thing Jared Cannonier said was, "I'm broke, so I gotta fight." He says, "I want a fight. If it's not a championship fight, I want one where if you win, you're guaranteed a championship fight." But he says, "I'm probably going to have to take something sooner." Whitaker and Gastelum, Whitaker and Adesanya will probably not be fighting for about 6 months. And he said, "I can't wait that long. I have to fight in 3 months." He said, "I'm broke. I need money." You're talking about the number 3 middleweight in the biggest MMA league on the planet, and he's not able to make his bills. And we've heard this over and over and over again. I've talked to many fighters on this show that told me, they would have continued to go in MMA or would have went into fighting to begin with if the pay had been more than what it was. Now, good news, there has been some ground gained. Each fighter is getting at least probably a couple $1,000s a fight from the Reebok deal, and the minimum pay now, you don't see fighters making, it's either $10,000 or $12,000, much better than it was a few years back. I've talked to fighters, big name fighters that were in big fights that you would remember that got paid maybe $3,000 or $4,000 show money, and that win bonus, it's basically a threat. And especially with the judges that we have right now, fighters getting ripped off, it can be a huge robbery. There's a lot of pressure on these judges to get the right decision, or they could make a family bankrupt. They could make a fighter that literally take half of his paycheck. I feel the win bonus, it was good at a time. It did provide an incentive for some of these fighters, and if you want to do that for the people that are making 10, 12,000 show and double for the win, then that's fine. But we need to go to some sort of system where once you get maybe 3 fights in the UFC, you no longer have to fight for that win bonus. You get your full purse. You don't have to worry about losing half of it. And that incentive bonus that was bumped up temporarily to $75,000 for the knockout or the win bonus should be at least $100,000. They've dropped it back down to $50,000, and nobody's really said much. Inside like the fan community, a few reporters. Ariel Helwani is always fighting for a higher fighter pay. I know Randy Couture is still working very hard on a fighters union, but he was working on it 3 years ago when he was on this show, when we talked about that. So not a whole lot of headway's been made there. You have a few bigger companies that you're working with now, of course. You got ESPN, the big 7-year TV deal. So, if some people put some pressure on ESPN, maybe they would in turn put some pressure on WME, who is the new owner of the UFC, and say, hey, can we get to the bargaining table and put together something a little fair for the compensation of these fighters? NFL, NBA teams, their players are getting over 50% of the revenue, and they should be. They are the product. This is not the same as when you go to a job and somebody makes a product and you put it on a shelf, or you scan it out, or whatever it is. They are the product. There's no business without them. You can't just plug in other people to fight each other professionally inside of a cage. There's only so many athletes that are capable and willing to fight at that level. Compensation in the UFC is under 20% for fighters. So over 50 in other sports, under 20 in the UFC. And William Morris Endeavor is coming off their biggest quarter ever. Double what their quarter was last year. And their revenue was about, I believe, 90% from the UFC. A big chunk of that was those big pay-per-views, the 2 Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier pay-per-views. But they also have a something like $700 million TV deal. Altogether, it might be $1.5 billion with the ESPN for the 7 years. But it is a huge deal. They're making money hand over fist. It's time we demand that they start paying the fighters. So however, you can show that you support the fighters, whether it's, just an email to William Morris, a handwritten letter, a tweet to Dana White, just getting in these forums and saying, hey, this is what we want. Tweet during the event. Sometimes those tweets will pop up during the events that people are tweeting. They may not post yours, but Jared Cannonier coming out and saying he had to fight because he was broke, that should be a wake-up call for fans everywhere, and especially if you're a fighter, if you're training, thinking about somebody that, thinking about possibly fighting in the future. My good friend Jalen Turner was fighting on Dana White Contender Series for 12-12. And, he's got some decent wins in there. Great fighter, but was not being compensated a lot of money. Let me know what you guys think, though. What can we do as fans? Is there anything we can do as fans? Is it our responsibility? And how much do you even care when you see our bloody fighters, what they're making? Does it bother you at all? Let me know down there in the comments. I look forward to reading and responding to all of them. As always, I love you. I respect you. And I'll see your fine asses next time.